The topic is mainstreaming child protection in emergencies. As many of you know, in our introductory package of training materials, we do have one module or one session that looks at mainstreaming. And this is, of course, how the people that we train, the practitioners, can be talking to people of other sectors about child protection in emergencies. We're also fortunate enough to have an actual training package that has been designed for us to engage with other sectors to talk to them about mainstreaming and help them mainstream child protection into their work. And we're quite fortunate to have as our speaker today Martin Hayes, who is Child Fund's Senior Child Protection Specialist and who was involved in that interagency package on mainstreaming child protection. And I will pass the floor over to him. He's going to speak, and then we'll have a Q&A session, and then I think he's going to do a second part of the presentation, and then there'll be another chance to speak some more. So I will get loaded up the presentation itself and pass the floor over to Martin.
Thanks, Joanna. Thanks, Joanna, for inviting me to present. I hope the information I'm going to share is useful to people on the call. First of all, the training, the presentation is going to be broken into three parts. The first part, I'm going to talk about key concepts around child protection mainstreaming and some examples. And then maybe we can pause. I'm going to go into more detail in one particular aspect of child protection mainstreaming, one essential element, which is children's meaningful and safe participation in programming. And then I'm going to end with a brief description of the training module, this interagency training module that Joanna mentioned, and I'll give you a website that you can access it. Maybe let's move to the next slide. So this definition is probably familiar to quite a few of you. Can everybody see the whole slide? There seems to be something kind of blocking there. Okay, but so this is the Child Protection Working Group's approved definition of child protection. And in non-emergency contexts, you can just remove the in emergencies, and it's also suitable. I'm highlighting this definition because it can be considered of a narrow definition, just really focusing on abuse, neglect, exploitation, and violence, and not focusing on all children's rights. Focus and useful for child protection mainstreaming because it simplifies and provides clarity in terms of protection can bring to other sectors, and with a clear, narrow focus provides us with the ability to see the added value that child protection can bring to other sectors. Maybe just next slide. Next slide, please.
Sorry, it's not coming along.
Okay.
There we go.
So this diagram here represents the categories of rights within the Convention on the Rights of the Child. As you know, there's 54 articles, but they can be grouped into 4 main groupings. Survival rights, really focusing more on physical, health, nutrition, sanitation, shelter. Development, emotional, cognitive rights of children. Participation rights related to decision-making and having a voice. And then protection rights, as I mentioned, abuse, exploitation, violence, and neglect. And there's a clear focus in child protection on abuse, exploitation, violence, and neglect. But this diagram tries to illustrate that there is mutually reinforcing relationship between the various rights. That it's and this is really what child protection mainstreaming intends to do, is to promote those mutually reinforcing relationships, so that, for example, children's participation is an important ingredient to ensuring their protection, getting their views on risks, and ensuring that they are resilient and are able to protect themselves. But we know that in an unsafe environment, their participation rights are hampered. But the ability to really focus on this mutually reinforcing relationship is basically what is the essence of child protection mainstreaming. We move on to the next slide. I wanted to give you a few examples of child protection mainstreaming in terms of a few different sectors. In terms of education, in an education program, we might focus on curriculum development, school construction, hiring and training of teachers. But we know that in a community environment that may not value certain subgroups of children's education, such as girls, or an unsafe school design, limiting children to using one latrine, or a school organization that doesn't hold teachers and students, for that matter, accountable for their behavior, we're not going to have access and quality education for children. In a water, and so child protection mainstreaming would add that. That would be kind of the added value that child protection mainstreaming would bring to the education sector, for example. Water projects might focus on locating boreholes, digging boreholes, installing hand pumps, organizing water maintenance groups. But from our experience, we know that the vast majority of water collectors are children, and children are exposed to a number of risks collecting water, either coming and going from the water, or kind of competing on lines to collect water, or coming back home later than expected and being subjected to violence at home, or the amount of time spent collecting water takes away from their study time or their ability to go to school. So the child protection would add these aspects to a kind of conventional water project, which would strengthen the quality of other sectors. Can we move to the next slide? So why is child protection mainstreaming important? And I've come up with three main reasons why. And the first is improving the quality of other sectors through better planning, coordination, and implementation. So primarily, I think child protection mainstreaming can be seen as a program quality issue. You know, we're trying to help other sectors improve the quality of their work by eliminating risks or reducing risks of unintended harm caused by poorly designed programs, ensuring that the coverage is adequately covering various subgroups that might be overlooked. And this is the way it can be pitched in terms of pitching the idea of child protection mainstreaming to other sectors, in terms of an effective way of strengthening the quality of planning, design, and implementation. The second point is we're able to protect more children through well-resourced programs. The unfortunate reality is that child protection programs as a sector are under-resourced or underfunded, and we know that there are other sectors, education and health, for example, that are that are typically receive far more funding, and through mainstreaming, we're able to perhaps piggyback on other programs and reach many more children with protective services. And third, strengthen a protective environment through relevant multi-sectoral approach. That to ensure to have a protective environment, where there are many actors within a community that we need to work with, and it's quite essential that through influencing other sectors to ensure that their programs and activities are more protective, and there's coordination between these various service providers, we're able to ensure that children their holistic well-being is attended to. On the next slide. So this is, you might be familiar with these rings. I think a number of organizations use them to look at the various layers of duty bearers in a protective environment. And I just wanted to focus on the community because a lot of our work involves strengthening or bridging capacity gaps of duty bearers at the community level. And so the usual suspects within a community might involve community health workers tied to the Ministry of Health, teachers that are tied to the Ministry of Education, police that are linked with the Ministry of Interior, perhaps, and community-based child protection mechanisms that are often the extension of the Ministry of Social Welfare in some cases. The expression "it takes a village to raise a child" is applicable to a protective environment. Really, it takes multiple duty bearers or stakeholders to ensure that the protection and holistic well-being of children are properly cared for, and community-based child protection mechanisms need these other service providers that are typically associated with other sectors, and so ensuring that we're working with these other sectors to ensure that there's a linkage between them, coordination, and that these other sectors are strengthening the quality of their services to meet the protective needs of children is essential. You move to the next slide. So here are some key characteristics of a mainstream program. When we talk about improving quality of programs and so forth of other sectors, what are kind of some of the key characteristics that I'm talking about? And the first is identifying and reaching vulnerable subgroups of children. So a mainstream program would be able to do that. And when I'm talking by subgroups, I'm vulnerable subgroups. I'm referring to particularly groups such as disabled children, out-of-school children, working children, that might be more difficult to reach and fall under the radar of sectoral programs. The second characteristic of a mainstream program, promoting children's holistic well-being. So sectors working in coordination with other sectors to ensure that children's as a whole person, their needs are addressed. The third I mentioned previously in terms of doing no harm, ensuring that the risks, a mainstream program would ensure that the risks of unintentional harm due to poorly designed and implemented programs are kept at a minimum. And finally, incorporating children's perspectives. And Child Fund is quite has prioritized this issue in particular in terms of an important, essential ingredient of child protection mainstreaming, ensuring that the quality of our programs include the perspectives of children. Can we move to the next slide, please? So in terms of operationalizing these characteristics, how would this be done? And here are some pretty general steps or methods that can be used to mainstream child protection corresponding to the previous sets of characteristics. So the first is ensuring representation of subgroups in sampling. So using sampling methods that don't overlook, that ensure that various hard-to-reach subgroups of children are included in sampling. Disaggregation of data, and that's quite straightforward in terms of ensuring that you're not looking at children or the population for that matter as a homogeneous group. The second, multi-sectoral collaboration and coordination, ensuring that the sectors and different agencies are working together to ensure that services are coordinated between the various sectors. Reduction of risks and possible unintended harm through stakeholders' perspective analysis, and holding basically consultations with various stakeholders to ensure that there are no unintended, the risk of unintended consequences are kept at a minimum. And finally, it's in bold because I'm going to continue with this point after this pause. Children's safe and meaningful participation in the program design, implementation, and monitoring and evaluation cycle. The children are able to participate in a safe and ethical way that is not tokenistic. Is an important ingredient in child protection mainstream. In terms of why is children's participation important, and particularly for mainstreaming, and in general. First of all, it's our child's right, Article 12 of the CRC. It's a right of a child to participate in decision-making that affects them, considering their evolving capacities. Children develop social competence and social responsibility, so there's definitely a developmental benefits of child participation. Children who are able to make decisions as children become good decision makers as adults. And finally, children's perspectives strengthen programs, and this is something that Child Fund as an agency considers very important and has invested time and resources in actualizing. Maybe just go back to that slide. The idea is that the children's perspective of emergencies and poverty in general are quite different from adults. And what we found through a poverty study that we carried out in multiple countries several years ago is that children's experiences of poverty are essentially different and multi-layered. That we, comparisons, interviews, and research with adults kind of reveal that they're quite different, and this has really informed the approach that we take, and really considering the various layers of experiences that children have with poverty. Can you move to the next slide? Within the group of children, we've also have discovered that children, again, are not a homogeneous group, and they experience risks within their community quite differently and varied. So these are kind of some examples that are compiled from a number of different participatory exercises with different age groups of children. What we found is that the type of risks that younger children identify include issues like road accidents, road safety, rivers in terms of drowning in rivers and open pits and wells, and grassy areas with snakes, mad dogs, dangerous men, and evil spirits. So kind of immediate physical threats are commonly identified by younger children. When we get to older children that might be more conscious of some of the social issues in their community, tended to identify gang violence, alcoholism, sexual violence, domestic violence, exploitative labor, early forced marriage, suicide. And so this is from a range of different communities, but the types of risks that older children that we worked with tended to be quite different and more on kind of a higher level, social level. You move to the next slide, please. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about a particular toolkit that we have that we've kind of streamlined through our community planning efforts quite a bit. And I want to just give some credit to someone who's on the call right now, Jessica Lenz, who when working with Child Fund, played a pretty important role in developing the initial toolkit. So there are about 25 tools in the toolkit, and but they're kind of broken down into 4 different types of tools: identifying tools, prioritizing tools, analyzing tools, and action planning. So these are animated, fun activities that are designed to really help children and program staff better understand the perspectives of children of risks in their communities. Another important element of the toolkit includes protective guidelines and some common issues that you're all familiar with, ensuring that confidentiality, informed consent, and a protection follow-up plan in cases of disclosures are also there. And so while other sectors are encouraged to use the tools, it's recommended that a child protection specialist assists with the preparation for the protective guidelines. And so this is not, these protective guidelines are not just meant to instructional in terms of how to use the tools, but really are for proper preparation before the tools are used. Next. So just to give you an idea of what's in the various sets of tools, most of these tools you might be familiar with: community mapping, body mapping. Drawing spaces is another type of mapping, but focuses on particular environments like the school or the household. Puppet show and the timeline. Some of these tools are more suitable for younger children, and some for older children. Like the puppet show might be more suitable for younger children. The timeline is more suitable for older children. But they're meant to help children to identify issues, risks, problems within their community, and they can be used by other sectors. Child Fund's multi-sectoral programs use these to help design everything from education to water to livelihood type programs. Then maybe move to the next slide. So here is a picture of girls in Ecuador doing mapping, community mapping. Next. These are young children in Liberia mapping using the ground to first map out their community and then identify issues within their community, risks, resources within the community. And we're working with quite young children there, facilitated by a young facilitator. Next. These are girls in Sierra Leone doing the drawing spaces exercise that I mentioned, focusing on their school. Next. And you're probably familiar with this. This is girls in Mexico doing a body mapping exercise, looking at risks and resources related to their senses. So the next set of tools includes prioritizing tools, and so the issues and resources identified in the identifying part of the sets of tools can be used, should be prioritized through these sets of tools. And again, some are more creative and simple, perhaps more suitable for younger children, and some for older children. But there are a number of different methods of prioritizing that we've used. Next slide. And this is a picture of girls in Mexico doing on the line, and they're prioritizing risks in their community based on prevalence or extent of an issue and impact. Next. Analyzing is the next step in terms of prioritized risks that were identified. And so these tools help children to identify some of the root causes of problems and to look at some of the larger kind of societal contributing factors. And definitely some are more suitable for older children, such as the triangle analysis, which is really looking at various spheres of culture and politics and how they contribute to various problems. And some more simple types of exercises, such as the YYY, that helps younger children or any age children identify root causes of problems. Maybe move to the next. This is a problem tree, not a very good photo, but it's the only one I had, which helps children to, in a very animated way, look at some of the symptoms of protection risks and some of the root causes of a protection risk. Next. And finally, some action planning and visioning, time machine help children to develop goals and objectives. How might be more about developing corresponding activities and solution tree. The similar rocks and carts are more suited for younger children. And then strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and challenges analysis, which helps children, like adults, to fine-tune some of the planning. And next. And this is an example of from the Philippines of children doing the child-friendly SWOT analysis with various, each of the different symbols, they're life-size symbols on the wall, represent strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and challenges that it helps them to kind of think about what are the possible problems or strengths related to the implementation of activities that are planned to help fine-tune their planning. The next. So that's forms. Just giving you a little bit more detail in terms of the tools, the toolkit that we have, and I want to move on to the training that we developed through this interagency group. It's basically a group of 4 friends that we're all in the Interactions Protection Working Group. It's an American consortium of NGOs which has a permanent protection working group that focuses more on advocacy issues. A group of us from Save the Children, IRC, World Vision, and Child Fund decided to form a task team under the working group to develop a one-day child protection mainstreaming training that targets field practitioners but not specializing in protection. So very simple training module. We originally intended that be a half day, but we ended up not having enough time and expanding it to a full day. But it can be done in one day, and it's very, it's kind of participatory exercises, theory, and then planning. And so it kind of wraps up with planning, with some concrete planning steps, so helping other sectors to plan for mainstreaming. This was all done with no budget, done on weekends and our spare time, and then was field tested. And similarly, no budget. We had, when we were going out to work on other projects, we reserved some time to field test the training module in Sierra Leone, the Gambia, Indonesia, Haiti, and the DRC. And what we found, basically the field testing was somewhat of a validation exercise, but also included helping us to kind of fine-tune the training and to finalize it. Next, it's available on the internet at this very complicated website address that you can copy down, or through Joanna, I can get it to you, or you can email me and I can respond with the training module, which is a facilitator's guide, and it also includes a PowerPoint presentation. So that's it for my presentation. If you have any questions or if you would like to contribute anything else, please let me know.
Super. Thank you very much. I know just on that last point of how you can access that, it might look like a very complicated, email URL, but in reality, if you just go to the cpwg.net and you search for it, it will pop up pretty quickly.
Great. That'll be easier.
Do people have any questions they'd like to raise with Martin or experiences they'd like to share? I had one issue I'd like to throw out if I could.
Sure, please.
One is that I know in the main training, introductory to child protection and emergency training package, advocacy and mainstreaming kind of get put together in a module. And one of the reasons why is around this idea of creating messages for other sectors. And then I think even Info as Aid is working on this so that we have some constant messages, or we can fine-tune them in the field, but they're standby messages we have for nutrition and other sectors. I'm wondering how you see that and how you use that as complements to what you presented today.
Yeah, that's a good question. And to be honest, nothing specific around messaging is included in the one-day training module. I think I think the focus was much more on field practitioners and how they can improve the quality of planning and implementation. So at kind of a messaging level, that wasn't really a real focus, but I think it is definitely an important contribution.